Yo, hello there. As you can probably tell from my voice, I've got a little bit of a cold in here, but this is the kind of determination I've got. I'm here even though I'm sick. So let's begin. So in the last video, we talked about the bones of the upper and lower limbs, but in today's video, we'll only be talking about the joints of the upper limb because there's so much to cover that is going to take over 10 minutes to finish the joints of the upper limb alone. So let's have a look at the bones of the upper limb before we get into the joint. Let's have a quick revision, I would say. Fush yi sha. That's revision in Chinese. So the first parts are the first kind of bones. We have the griddle bones, which are the bones that are connected to the axial skeleton. Next up, we have the free bones, the bones that are free of the axial skeleton. So the griddle consists of two different kind of bones, two different individual bones. We have the clavicle bone and we have the scapular bone. And something to keep in mind in the scapular bone is those two images are very important to realizing and understanding the joint of the shoulder and the how this connects to the axial skeleton. So we know that in here, the end of the spine of the scapular bone, we have this kind of extra bone in here called the acromion end, or the acromial angle. And we have on the front, if we look anteriorly, we're going to see this extra process in here called the coracoid process. So this process in here and this end, I would call it process here, 1, 2, are very crucial into understanding the joint. So we're going to get into that. And yeah, free bones, we have got the humerus bone, we have got the radius and ulnar bones, and we got the carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. The last three are actually part of the hand bones. And yeah, very simple stuff. Let's get into the harder part, the joint. So the first part, we're going to divide this part in two parts again, the articulations of the griddle and the articulations of the free bones. So in the articulations of the griddle, so what is the griddle? Like I said, the bones that connect to the axial skeleton. And how they connect to the axial skeleton, I hear you asking. So that's what we're gonna know now. The first kind of joint, or the first joint we're gonna be talking about, is a sternoclavicular joint. And by the name, I could divide this name into two parts actually. We have the first part called the we have the sternum, the stern. This reminds me of the word sternum, which is this bone in here. We also have the clavicular, and we know that this is the clavicle bone. So we have the sternum and clavicle. So I'm guessing this should be the joint between the sternum bone and the sternum bone and the clavicle bone. And yes, I'm very correct. I'm always correct. So yeah, the sternoclavicular joint is actually it consists of two things. We have the capsule, which is this part in here, and we have the ligaments surrounding the capsules. We have the anterior sternoclavicular ligament and the other one on the other side. And yeah, that's how it looks generally. We also have this costa clavicular ligament, which is a ligament between the first costal bone and the clavicle bone, but it does not have to do a lot with the connection between the sternum and the clavicle bone. That's why I will not talk about it. So yeah, here's how it looks. Here's a drawing of it. Here's I believe a real picture of it. And yeah, the sternoclavicular joint. The next joint, we have the acromioclavicular joint. Again, by the name, I'm going to divide this into two parts. The acromin, or the acromio. We know that this end in here, this is a scapular bone, and this end is called the acromial end. So the acromin, we have acromio, so acromin, so it's going to be related to this part. The second part is a clavicular, again clavicular, clavicle, so it's going to be the joint that connects the acromin to the clavicle. Very correct here. So here we have the acromin, here we have the clavicle, and here we have the acrominoclavicular ligament in here. Acromin, clavicular, clavicle, ligament, or joint, whatever you want to call it. So as support for the acrominoclavicular joint or ligament in here, we have two different kinds of ligament. The first one is the coraclavicular ligament, which is actually two different ligaments. We have the trapezoid ligament and the conchoid ligament, and together they're called the coraclavicular ligament. Why they're called the coraclavicular? Again, this end here, this process in here called the cricoid process. So cora, and we have the clavicular. Again, clavicular is all over the place. So coraclavicular, that's why it's called coraclavicular ligament. And lastly, you have this very interesting ligament to me, because why this is interesting, I'll say it in a second. We have the coroacromial ligament. This is interesting because it actually connects two of the similar bone. This is exactly the same bone. We have the acromin, which is part of the scapula. We have the cricoid process, which is also part of the scapula, and we have the coroacromial ligament, which is a ligament that connects two of the same bones. So I don't know why it's there. I'm guessing it's there for extra support, but it's for sure very interesting. So yeah, that should be it for the articulations of the griddle of the upper limb. And let's talk about the articulations of the free bones of the upper limb. Again, very, very complicated. You're going to see from the picture. So the first part, we have the shoulder joint. The shoulder joint is the joint between the humerus and the scapula and the clavicular bone. So if I'm actually going to give it a different name, I'm going to call it humeroclavicular sternal joint. I don't know what if that's a thing or not. And it looks very complicated, but it's actually very simple. We have the glenohumeral ligament, which there are three of. We have the superior glenohumeral ligament, middle and inferior glenohumeral ligament, which is 1, 2, 3. So as you can see here, very simple. Also another ligament, we have the transverse humeral ligament in here, which is a ligament that holds the end of the tendon of the brachii-bicep in here, and it's called transverse because boink, it goes through it. It's like a transverse kind of thing, you know. It's important to know that terms like the word transverse. It's important to know what it means. And yeah, in here, joint capsule. So this joint is basically a ball and socket kind of joint. Here we have a socket and here we have a ball, and the ball goes inside the socket. We have the glenoid cavity between them, and the glenoid labrum, the labrum that actually wears out over age and causing different kinds of pain for older people. And yeah, so in here, in this picture, many complicated ligaments all over the place, but actually not complicated, very simple. We have the acromioclavicular ligament, we already talked about it. We have the coracoacromial ligament, talked about it. We have the coraclavicular ligament, talked about it. So very simple. Oh, another ligament here to keep in mind is a transverse scapular ligament, which makes this kind of foramen in here, the hole, that I've actually happened to know that a nerve goes through this hole here, a very crucial nerve called the subclavicular nerve. So that's the nerve that goes through here. And yeah, here's another view of it cut in half. Very interesting stuff. Next up, we have the elbow joint. So the elbow joint is different from the shoulder joint because it's not a ball and socket kind of thing. It's just a bunch of cartilages that connect to each other through those ligaments in here. So one to keep in mind is the annular ligament. So annular ligament of radius, this ligament in here, that basically hugs the radius. So the ulnar hugs the radius. Another important ligament is the ulnar collateral ligament, which on the other side we have the radial collateral ligament. So here, ulnar bone, ulnar collateral ligament, radius bone, radial collateral ligament. Very interesting stuff. We also have the saciform recess of synovial membrane. Don't know what the fuck that is, actually, to be honest. Just something to keep in mind, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, here's a different view looking at it from the side. And yeah, that's how it looks. The same names here are the same names here are the same name here. Nothing much to look at. And here's just the bones. Again, it actually looks like a ball and socket. I don't know. All right, next up we have the joints between the ulna and radius. So we know the ulna and radius, two different bones, and they're connected to each other. How they're connected through each other, through those ligaments in here that are very obvious. It's all a bunch of terms, names that are very important to keep in mind. There's nothing weird about it, very straightforward. Just those two bones connecting to each other through this ligament in here. And lastly, we have the joints of the hand. So the joints of the hand, they are very complicated. Look at this picture, very, very complicated. But it's very important to simplify it. So in here, we know that those are called the carpal bones. Those are called the metacarpal bones. And those are called the phalanges. So yeah, simple. Let's get deeper into it. In here, we have interphalangeal joints. So interphalangeal means joints inside of the phalanges, so between the phalanges and each other. Also, after that, we have the metacarpopharyngeal joints. So by the name, I could guess that it's the joint between the metacarpals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the phalanges. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, those 5 joints in here, between the metacarpal and the phalanges. Very simple. Next up, we have the carpo-metacarpal joints. By the name, I could guess they're the joints between the carpals and the metacarpals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 5 in here. And this one is a little bit extra special because it has a name. We know here this bone is called the trapezoid bone. And we have the trapeziometacarpal joint. So trapezoid, metacarpals, joint between them. As simple as that. And yeah, those are joints in between the hand, among the hand themselves. But how does the wrist joint form? The joint between the radius and ulna and the carpals. How is it connected? Well, it's connected through this Let's give it a second to load here. Quickly. All right, yeah, so it's connected through this kind of membrane here, or it's called the fibrous capsule and the synovial membrane of wrist. So that's what it's called, and it's just basically this membrane and this capsule is what connects the radius and the ulna to the carpal bones. And again, as simple as looking at it and guessing where it is. So here we have intermetacarpal ligaments, so ligaments between the metacarpals. That's why they're called intermetacarpal ligaments. And here we have intermetacarpal joints. So the ligaments are what make the joints. And yeah, nothing else to keep in mind, I believe. The carpometacarpal joint is just a name of this specific joint. Ulnar ligament, nothing much to keep in mind in this picture. Lastly, we have this very complicated picture. I hate it so much. It looks very complicated, but it's actually very simple. Again, how do you understand all of this is by understanding this very simple picture in here. The interphalangeal joints, interphalangeal joints, like I said, the metacarpophalangeal joints, the carpometacarpal joints, and the trapezoid and the trapezoio-metacarpal joints. Very simple. So here's the picture to keep in mind. It's all just terms, names of different bones and different joints. Nothing very interesting about it. So yeah, that's it. I hope this video was helpful. I'm a little bit sick, so I might have missed a couple here or there. But yeah, I recommend you study more. This is just a very general outlook. Thank you for listening. I hope that was helpful.